Hi, I'm Zombot, and welcome to a Bow the Last Guardian tips and tricks video. So a lot of my friends have been asking me how I use the Bow the Last Guardian, what the best way to do it, some tips and tricks, and how to get a lot of damage out of this bow. So first of all, I'll say if you're not doing full manual of this bow, it's going to be very tricky, unfortunately. So this bow requires a lot of focus and attention. But basically, the bow has a passive and a active special ability. The passive active ability gives you a stack whenever you hit a target, and that will give you a stack if you use an auto attack, like you see there, 2 stacks, or if you use a damaging ability, 3 stacks. That's not a bleed. So if I use a defensive, no stacks. Auto attack, get a stack. Bleeds also do not give stacks. So I can use bleeds like corruption shot and fragmentation shot, and it will not give you a stack. Whenever those stacks get to 8, so you'll never see the number 8, but let's get to 6. This will be 7. And so when I would get that 8th stack, it'll cause another hit to happen. So we get the secondary hit. That secondary hit is based on the damage of whatever ability you used for that final attack. So if I use something like Tendrils, which is high hitting, it'll be a high hitting attack. Or if I use the active special attack, which is a heavy hitting damage, it'll do a high hitting attack. So let's get back up to 7. So if I use a big hitting attack like the special attack, it'll hit a big secondary hit. And the special attack also puts a counter on here to 30 seconds. So while that 30 seconds is running, instead of needing 8 stacks, you only need 4. So on this 4th stack, it'll be a big hitting attack. So that was snapshot. So the first hit of snapshot caused another hit to happen. And then the second hit of snapshot gave another stack. So multi-hitting abilities do give multiple stacks. So what ends up happening with the Bow of the Last Guardian is you try to time your big hitting abilities on either the 8th stack or the 4th stack, depending on if you have the special attack going. That can be a little tricky for some things. So say you're using rapid fire. So I'll get the special attack going. So now the 30-second counter is going, so every 4th attack is going to be a big hit. So if I'm using rapid fire and I want to use a Saren Godbow in the middle, wait till 3, and when you see that 3, that's when you want to use your big hitting attack like SGB or the Bow of the Last Guardian special or Snapshot or Tendrils. So another thing you can do is you can plan. So if I know that I want to do Tendrils, what I can do is I'll get the special attack going, so I'll get some Adren here. So now the bow special is up. So I'm going to get the 2 stacks. Then I'm going to switch to my dual wield, use snapshot, that will not give me a stack. Switch back to my bow and spam and click with Tendrils. So if you use a dual wield ability before switching to a 2-hand, clicking and then using Tendrils, you get an auto attack and the Tendrils hit. And since Tendrils can hit very high, it can be really useful. So what you saw there is I had 2 stacks, then I used Needle Strike. That doesn't add a stack. Then I switched to my bow, and I click on the target and use Tendrils. The auto attack that comes out gives you 3 stacks, then the Tendrils will give you 4 stacks. So those are some things you can do to plan for that. Another thing you could do is, say you don't have enough adrenaline, so let's dump some adrenaline here. So say you're here at 1 stack, and you don't have enough adrenaline to use a bow spec. So what you could do is use an ability to get a stack, then use a bleed to get your adrenaline up, another bleed to get your adrenaline up, and now you can use that bow spec when you hit 4. So whenever I use this bow, I usually will bring my crossbows, just so that way I can time things out. So if it's between phases or the health is low, I don't want to waste a big hitting attack and I want to keep my stacks. So like for instance, right now I have 3 stacks. So if I use a bow special, it's going to be a big double hit, but maybe I don't have enough adren or I just want to wait for a different part of the fight. I can use crossbows to build adrenaline and do some damage, and then when I'm ready, I can switch to the Bow of the Last Guardian and boom, hit one of those big attacks. Another thing I'll use crossbows a lot for is, so say I do not have Adrenaline Potion available and I want to use Death Swiftness. I'll use Death Swiftness and then immediately go into a Greater Ricochet with Hydrix Bolts to try and get a little bit of adren. And sometimes that can help with building adren. Another tip for the Bow of the Last Guardian, since I said that there is a lot of adrenaline issues, is to use the aura Inspiration. So Inspiration, every time you have a hit splat on the target, it gives you 0.5% adrenaline. So I'll activate this. So normally, I'll take these pants off because they have Impatient. I don't want to make it harder to do these calculations. And I'll also get a different set of arrows for the crossbows. So normally if I was going to use Greater Ricochet with, say, these crossbows. Oh, that's with the Hydrix. So I'll let these Hydrix buff run out. So if I were to use Greater Ricochet with Inspiration, it gives 12.5% adrenaline, 8% from the basic, 1% from my relic, which gives plus 1% adrenaline per basic ability. Then I'm hitting the target 7 times, so that's 7 hit splats times 0.5% adrenaline. So that's an extra 3.5% adrenaline for that Greater Ricochet. So even if I don't have Hydrix Bolts and say I want to camp the bow and I want lots of adrenaline, so if I use Greater Ricochet with the bow with Coroming 4, 12.5, and then that time I actually popped one of the stacks, so I had 1 stack, and then Greater Ricochet added 7 stacks. Then that caused the passive ability to go off and hit the Draining Dummy. So that gave an extra 0.5% adrenaline. So with Greater Ricochet and Inspiration and Coroming 4 with the Bow of the Last Guardian, you can get up to 13% adrenaline from just using Greater Ricochet. So that can be useful for building adrenaline. The same thing with bleeds. If I use a bleed with Inspiration on, you get 9% from the attack. Then every time it hits anything, you get 0.5% adrenaline. So if it moves to different targets, you get a lot of adrenaline. Same thing with Fragmentation Shot. Every time the damage ticks, you get 0.5% adrenaline. Whenever your Bow of the Last Guardian passive goes off and that adds another hit splat, that gives you an extra 0.5% adrenaline. So what ends up happening is Inspiration Aura can allow you to use your Bow of the Last Guardian spec a lot more. And then like I was saying with the Greater Ricochet giving you 7 stacks, another tip for the Bow of the Last Guardian is to use, say you're building up your abilities, things are going good. So once I get to 3 stacks, I'm going to use the Bow Special. So I use the Bow Special, then I can immediately Greater Ricochet. 7 stacks causes it to go off once and then add 3 more. So now I'm at 3 again and I can immediately use the Bow Spec again. So Greater Ricochet is really useful with the Bow of the Last Guardian because it gives you 7 stacks, which is enough to immediately use the Bow of the Last Guardian special again for extra damage. So whenever you are using Eldritch Crossbow special, you can get a free auto attack. So say I'm about to use the Eldritch Crossbow special. So you can get a free auto attack like that. So I'll show you that again. So if you use dual wield crossbows, so I use the special, I wait 1 tick, click on the target. Okay, let's try this again. So use dual wield attacks, switch to your two-hander, click on the target, and then use ECB special. So even though I use the ECB special after the auto attack, I still got the ECB special effect on that auto attack. So that can be a nice way to get a little bit extra damage. The other thing you can do if you're not switching to your crossbow is if you're going to be using, say you're going to use abilities, so I could use the Eldritch Crossbow special, wait a second, click, and it'll take 1 extra tick, but you can get another auto attack out of there. And that is my tips and tricks for the Bow of the Last Guardian. Next, I will do a replay of some kills I got at Raksha, just to kind of show a rotation that you can use for the Bow of the Last Guardian. So here's a example of a kill at Raksha and the rotation I use with the Bow of the Last Guardian, or that you can use for the Bow of the Last Guardian. I'm going to change the playback to a little bit slower to make it easier to follow, and I'll be pausing it along the way, explaining things. So I'm going to start it off with a Death Swiftness and Adrenaline Potion. Throw a Vuln Bomb. Then I'm going to start, my first ability is going to be Target Cycle, Smoke Cloud, then SGB. Then I'm going to go to my crossbows and use a Greater Ricochet to hopefully get some Adrenaline. So I did not get Adrenaline there. But since I want to use Rapid Fire and Snapshot early on in the Death Swiftness so that I can use them again at the end before Death Swiftness runs out, instead of using this Adrenaline on a Bow of the Last Guardian special or something along those lines, I'm going to use Sigil and then Rapid Fire Snapshot. So there's Snapshot. If my Greater Ricochet had given me Adrenaline right here at 3 stacks, I could use Bow of the Last Guardian, but right now my Adrenaline's too low, so I'm just going to build some Adrenaline with a Dazing Shot. So Dazing Shot, and then I'm going to use Greater Ricochet to try and get some more Adrenaline. So there we got some Adrenaline, and I have 4 stacks. And I misclicked to move around like a little crazy person, but then I used Bow of the Last Guardian, that resets my stacks to 0, and that's going to be a big double hit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plan to use a Tendrils, so I'm going to get 2 stacks. I'm going to start with a Snipe and then do a Dazing Shot. Now I switch to crossbows and use Needle Strike to both allow me to get a free auto and to have a increased damage because of the Needle Strike buff. So I'm going to use Needle Strike, switch to two-hander, and I'm going to click on the target, and that will give the free auto. So right now I'm at 2 stacks. Clicking on the target will give me a free auto, which will be 3 stacks, and then when Tendrils hit, that will be the 4th stack, which will cause an extra hit. So you'll see a bunch of hits. So I'm clicking the target. So there it happens. So you see the free auto, and then Tendrils hits for 12.5k, and then I get the 10k from the extra hit. And I'm already back up to 3 stacks because I just used Greater Ricochet. So Greater Ricochet, that's some of these damages coming in. So that gets me up to 3 stacks again. And since I'm at 3 stacks, I can immediately Bow of the Last Guardian special again. So Bow of the Last Guardian special, that resets my stacks. It's going to be 2 big hits. There's 10k, 12k. Then what I'm going to do is I have enough Adrenaline for a rapid fire, so I'm going to start rapid firing. And I'm watching the stacks here. Once that gets to 3 stacks, I'm going to be using SGB special. So there's the SGB special. And since I use that on the 4th stack, it'll give me an extra hit from the Bow of the Last Guardian passive. So there's the extra hit. You can see the little green smoke from the extra hit. and then you can see the SGB hits going. Then I immediately use Greater Ricochet again, which puts me back up to 3 stacks. So I can use Bow the Last Guardian spec, and that was the last tick of Death Swiftness. So I get the 12k, 12k. Then here I'm just going to be building, try to get up to 3 stacks. I'm at 3 stacks, so I can use Bow the Last Guardian special. Then I use Greater Ricochet, and he has 400k, 401,000 health, and his phase is at 400,000 health. So instead of wasting this fourth stack on a Bow of the Last Guardian special and losing adrenaline just to do 1k damage, I'm going to switch to my crossbows and just use a few abilities to get his health down without adding stacks. So then I'll keep my 3 stacks, but his damage will be done. So I'm going to switch to crossbows, use Needle Strike, and then I think I used Corruption Shot. There, I had 3 stacks, so I switched to my bow and did the bow spec again. And so now what I'm going to be doing is for phase 3, I like to prepare for Death Swiftness, so I'm going to get up to 2 stacks. So I just use bow spec, that reset. Then I just used a flank. And then I'm going to use my crossbows for some adrenaline with a Greater Ricochet. Looks like it worked. And then I'm at 1 stack right now, and since I know I want 2 stacks for the upcoming Death Swiftness, I'm going to use a bow spec. So even though I use this bow spec, it'll give me 2 stacks, but it will not double hit. But what it will do is it will reset the 30-second timer. So I'm going to use a bow spec there. Now I'm at 2 stacks again. Then I'm going to clear the pools. I must have dead click or something. So here at Raksha, with the tier 95 accuracy, you have 100% accuracy against Raksha with full arrows, but you don't have 100% accuracy against the little shadow clone, whatever the heck. And I don't really like the shadow clone guys, they are frustrating, so I usually just kill them. So I'm going to switch to my crossbows here, so I have 100% accuracy, which I would not have with the full arrows. So I'll get a free auto, then bleed walk him, then stun him, then piercing shot, and he's dead. And that also builds me up to 100% adrenaline, so I can Death Swiftness. And then here I'm going to do a Greater Ricochet for adren. I got a little bit of adren, which is good. And I was at 2 stacks, so I just used Dazing Shot to get up to 3 stacks. Then I'm going to SGB special on that 4th stack to get the extra hit. And then I'm going to be, I'm using Snipe to get 1 stack. And then I'm going to Snapshot to get 3 stacks, and I can Bow the Last Guardian spec, and then I immediately Greater Ricochet, so I can Bow the Last Guardian spec again, because Greater Ricochet will put me at 3 stacks. And now he's low, so I'm just going to use basics to finish him off. And so here at the phase 4 transition, you lose all your stacks. So even though I have 3 stacks, it'll be reset down to 1, or 0, I mean. So I'm going to start off with a Smoke Cloud, and then Dazing Shot to get 1 stack, then a Snapshot to get 3 stacks. So there's my Snapshot, I'm at 3 stacks. Then I'm going to use a Bow of the Last Guardian special to get the timer running and to hit a double hit. So Bow of the Last Guardian special, get that big double hit, and the timer's running again. Now I'm going to Greater Ricochet for some adrenaline. Now what I would do is either build up to 3 stacks with basics, or if I have enough adrenaline, I'll use a rapid fire. So my Greater Ricochet did give me a buff for adrenaline, so I'll probably be able to use a Greater rapid fire. So yep, I'm going to start rapid firing, and so here I'm waiting till I see that 3, then I'm going to use the SGB spec. So 2, 3, when I see that 3, I'll SGB spec. So that gives me a big extra 10k hit. Then I used a Dazing Shot to get 1 stack, and then I'm going to use Greater Ricochet to try and build adrenaline. I didn't really get lucky there, but I've got enough adrenaline to do an ECB spec, so I'm going to do an auto ECB spec. So I'm going to wait a tick, click on them, and then I'm going to auto ECB spec. So you see I got the auto attack right there, and the auto attack did have the ECB spec applied. And that auto attack also puts me at 2 stacks. So I know that I'm going to want to be able to do a lot of damage for the shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snipe to get, I'm going to use bleeds to do some damage, but that won't build stacks, but it will also build adrenaline. Then I'm going to use a snipe to get that third stack. And now I'm just going to wait a little bit and try to use the bow spec. And since it will be the fourth stack, it'll be a big double hit, and I have ECB spec, so this will clear the shield. So just clear the shield immediately, and then I use Greater Ricochet to put me at 3 stacks again. Then I can use bow spec again. Now I know I'm building up to a Death Swiftness, so I'm going to get to 2 stacks, and then I'll switch to crossbows for building a Dren. So I'm going to get 1 stack with Dazing Shot, 1 stack with Tuska's Wrath. Then I'm going to use a bleed, doesn't build a stack. I'm going to switch to the crossbows, use a Needle Strike, that won't build a stack, and it will build adrenaline. Then I'll do Death Swiftness with an adrenaline pot, try to Greco for more adrenaline. Now I'm going to do an ECB, and I'm going to click on him, wait a tick, and then I'll do a SGB. So I'm going to click on him, that'll give a free auto, that'll be 3 stacks. So that's the 3rd stack, I got the free auto there. You can see the free auto. Well, I guess it's not free, it took me an extra tick, but whatever. Or maybe 2 ticks. But then at 3 stacks, I use SGB, so I get the free extra hit from SGB, and then all the SGB hits. Now I'm just going to dump my thresholds for the end of the kill. So that was around a 2 minutes 45 seconds. It's not going to be a world record time or anything, but it's quick and you don't have to do any pre-phasing, and it doesn't take a lot of food because you're not camping ECB spec. You could definitely increase the time or decrease the time by doing some pre-phase incendiary shot or something along those lines. You could probably do a pool skip, but this is one way that you can go through and plan your kill around the stacks to try to maximize your DPS. But thanks for watching.